Welcome to Unholy Inquiry, where each tale leads you deeper into a labyrinth of mystery waiting to be uncovered. This time, join us as we delve into Miss Marple, the tea set that vanished, a fan-crafted story that pays homage to the genius and sophistication of Agatha Christie's iconic detective, Miss Marplet. We are thrilled to have you with us on this captivating journey. Share your thoughts, let us know where you're tuning in from, and if you spot any details we missed, your feedback is invaluable. Together, let's continue to shape even more thrilling enigmas. Chapter 1. The Uninvited Guest. The rain drummed steadily against the leaded windows of Grimsby Manor, creating a melancholic symphony that echoed through the vast hallways. Inside, the air was rich with the aroma of freshly baked scones, warm and inviting, mingling with the fragrant notes of Earl Grey steeping in delicate china teapots. It was a typical English afternoon where tradition enveloped even the proudest of estates in comfort, making them feel like homes rather than mere abodes of wealth. Miss Marple, seated gracefully in the corner of the drawing room, watched the well-to-do ladies of St. Mary Mead chatter animatedly. They were enrobed in silks and brocades, their laughter punctuated by the soft clink of teacups. The hostess, Lady Eleanor Grimsby, presided over the gathering with a veneer of effortless elegance, her auburn hair twisted into an immaculate chignon accented by a pearl necklace that glimmered under the soft glow of the chandelier. Yet, there was a hint of something deeper in her gaze, a flicker of anxiety unbefitting the occasion. As Miss Marple delicately lifted her cup, the resounding crash of something heavy falling echoed from the entrance hall. The laughter ceased abruptly, and all eyes turned toward the sound, the air thick with palpable tension. A moment later, the door swung open, revealing a figure drenched by the rain. A gentleman dressed in a well-worn trench coat, his hat askew and features obscured by the shadows. The collective gasp from the room punctuated the arrival of the unexpected visitor. "Mr. Dorian Harrington, if I'm not mistaken," Lady Eleanor breathed, her voice barely a whisper. A current of unease surged through the staff, who scurried to provide assistance, towels in hand, oblivious to the suspicious glances traded among the guests. "I apologize for the intrusion," Mr. Harrington said, shaking off the dampness as he entered. The smell of wet wool and something darker clung to him, a hint of trouble. "I've come seeking refuge, and perhaps even clarity." The last word hung in the air, unusual for a mere guest interrupting a quaint tea gathering. "The storm," Lady Eleanor finally managed, recovering her poise, "has caught you off guard." But her eyes bore into him with a blend of fear and recognition. "It is not the storm I fear, Lady Grimsby, but the tempest you've bred in your household." His voice was steady, yet beneath it lay an underlying seismic tension. The guests shifted uneasily, partaking in a silent drama fueled by intrigue and dread. Miss Marple could sense the restrained violins of turmoil surrounding the Grimsbys. Having long known Lady Eleanor and her elder brother, Lord Quentin Grimsby, she marched through this whirlwind of unspoken truths with deliberate confidence. A shadow of a smile played on her lips. She had grown accustomed to the unraveling of even the most tightly wound relationships. "Dorian," a voice broke through the atmosphere as Lady Eleanor's trusted maid, Mary, emerged from the shadows, her demeanor deceptively calm, yet resolutely steely. "You shouldn't be here. Not now." "Ah, Mary," Dorian rasped, his expression morphing into one of contempt. "You've played your part well, haven't you? It's paying off nicely for you." Before anyone could respond, Lady Eleanor, using her refined poise as an armor, steered the conversation back to civility. How very impolite of me. It's been ages, Dorian. Do join us for tea. I shall, but not for this, he said curtly, gesturing towards the banquet spread out before them. Merely a formality binds me to this hallowed ground. Perhaps it is time for the world to know about your missing heirloom. The sudden mention of the missing tea set hung in the air like a palpable threat, causing the room to hold its breath. Almost as if responding to an unspoken cue, Miss Marple's sharp mind flared with curiosity. The Grimsby tea set, a fine collection of china, rumoured to bear a history as rich as the estate itself. Valued not just for its material worth, but steeped in family legacy, its disappearance had left whispers snaking through the tight-knit village. Dorian, stoop not to such accusations. Lady Eleanor's composure wavered, her porcelain face barely concealing rising panic. This is utterly ridiculous. Miss Marple, sensing desperation, mingling with defiance, leaned forward slightly. Might I inquire, Mr. Harrington, how you came across this information? An innocent chat with Lady Felicity at the Crooked Hat, Dorian replied, sardonic. She mentioned an underhanded deal. His eyes flared with an unfathomable mixture of anger and betrayal. A missing tea set, which I believe holds something much more profound than mere sentiment. At that moment, Miss Marple turned her gaze towards the intricately embroidered tablecloth, where a single thread seemed out of place, contrasting sharply with its peers. It sliced through the opulent scene with grim purpose, an anomaly. She made a mental note, as Lady Eleanor spoke sweetly, yet sharpened. Dorian, have you truly come here to make baseless accusations? It would be your public image, Lady Grimsby. His eyes burned with indignation. And if anyone ought to be worried, it should be you. This tea set, with its secrets buried in the past, was not merely stolen. A distant clock chimed, marking the passage of time in resonant tones, and the rain outside began to rage, splattering against the windows as the winds howled. The tension was electric. Every person in that drawing room now trapped within a net of vulnerability. The air grew dense with unspoken truths and growing suspicions, like dark clouds gathering for a torrential downpour, mirroring the storm outside. As Lady Eleanor stilled, regaining composure whilst maintaining her delicate facade, Miss Marple felt the weight of interwoven lives stretching out before her, each thread containing possibility suffused with peril. What secrets lurked beneath the polished surface of this esteemed family? I believe you've all been served enough mystery for one afternoon, Lady Eleanor declared tersely, her voice revealing an authoritative depth. I suggest you take your leave, Dorian, before this gathering turns into something grim. Dorian stood resolute. Perhaps it is too late for that, Eleanor. Secrets have a way of coming to light, don't they? With those words, he turned towards the door, and with one powerful step out into the tempest, he left the gathering charged with tension. The lingering silence screamed of unvoiced accusations as each lady exchanged furtive glances, fear teetering on the edge of mania. Miss Marple, steady as the storm, poured through her thoughts. Taking solace in the hush that followed, she felt a finger of unease trace its way down her spine. A puzzle began to crack open before her, and she would not leave this place without knowing the truth. But the biggest clue lay dangling in the depths of those hidden eyes. The mysteries of Grimsby Manor now lay bare. Mere hours before, a secret worth a fortune was poised to rip the very fabric of this family apart. And Miss Marple knew all too well the importance of looking closely at the threads woven into life's tapestry, What unknown depths lay beneath the surface? As the echoes of the storm continued to rage outside, she knew deep down that this was but the beginning of a revelation that would shake the very foundation of the Grimsby legacy. For underneath every clue, another mystery beckoned, each waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Parlour. The wind howled and licked at the windows of Grimsby Manor, the rain now a torrential downpour that cast a gloomy pall over the afternoon's gathering. Inside, however, the drawing-room was aglow with the flickering light of candles and the warm crackle of an old fire, a stark contrast to the tempest outside. Yet, the atmosphere was anything but warm. A tangible tension threaded through the gathered guests, hanging heavy in the air as they nibbled on scones and pretended to sip their tea, hushed conversation, betraying their true feelings. Miss Marple, perched in her favourite armchair, observed the unfolding tableau with keen interest. Each flicker of whispered dialogue, each furtive glance exchanged, sketched a complex picture of unease among the residents of the manor, the backstory woven tightly into the fabric of the evening. Lady Eleanor sat stiffly on her settee, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her eyes darting toward the door as though expecting another uninvited guest. The guests, an assortment of villagers, local dignitaries, and notable figures occupying the space, remained unaware of the tempest beyond as they navigated the currents of social niceties. A murmur rippled through the room as Mary the maid entered, her demeanour unchanged, yet her eyes flickered with an embers of worry. "The storm appears to be worsening," she announced, although the unease in her voice was palpable, like the gnawing tension that had settled upon the guests. "Shall we prepare another pot of tea, or perhaps some sherry?" Lady Eleanor forced a smile, but it did not reach her eyes. "Thank you, Mary, but perhaps now is not the time." Her response elicited a chorus of half-hearted reassurances from the ladies scattered around the room, but little else. With a momentary flicker of resolve, Miss Marple invited herself into the fray. "A second pot would certainly warm the spirit, if nothing else. Perhaps I might assist?" She rose, her movements elegant yet unhurried, as she made her way toward the sideboard, careful not to draw too much attention to herself. "Really, Miss Marple," one of the guests, Mrs. Whittaker, interjected, her eyes narrowing. "With everything going on around us, we should focus on the matter at hand, the missing tea set, and the potential implications it carries. Surely that deserves our utmost attention." The room fell silent, their collective discomfort palpable. Miss Marple returned to her chair, her mind racing. "Indeed, quite right. It seems that our gathering has become more about secrets than civility." She leaned forward slightly, her eyes sparkling with mischief mingled with seriousness. "Why is it that the absence of a mere tea set unravels the threads of such esteemed lives as yours, dear ladies?" Lady Eleanor's eyes darkened with offence, the tension coiling tighter around her, yet she offered a quick, forced smile. "I assure you, Miss Marple, this isn't the place for wild speculation. The tea set is simply an heirloom, lost amidst the chaos. Nothing more." "But that's exactly it, is it not?" Miss Marple replied, gently, her voice a soothing balm over the rising turmoil. "Heirlooms carry history, and history can infer meaning. Might it not have vanished into obscurity due to the very weight of such importance?" "Hush," Lady Felicity snapped, her demeanour youthful but her voice sharp. "If we're not careful, this will descend into gossip. Really, Miss Marple, you ought to watch your words." "Ah, but gossip is what we thrive on, is it not? For in the very act of sharing, we unwittingly reveal truths we would prefer remain hidden. Miss Marple settled back into her chair, collecting her thoughts as she regarded them closely. Core threads bind us all. Loyalties, jealousies, perhaps even crimes that reach further than a missing set of china. Amidst the charged silence, the air reverberated with whispers, the tension thick and electric. Miss Marple's observant eye caught the briefest flicker of movement from Mary, who stood near the doorway, her expression momentarily shifting from anxiety to triumph as her gaze flitted toward a small, polished table against the wall. "Mary," Miss Marple called out softly, "is there something you would care to share?" Startled, Mary blinked, her posture stiffening. "No, ma'am, Lies do have a way of leaving traces," Miss Marple interrupted gently, her attention honing in. She advanced to the table, an elegant piece holding an intricately carved leaf motif, placed safely from the coveted chaos of the gathering. "I couldn't help but notice a small jar of preserves, untouched since the first course, perfectly preserved, like a secret waiting to be unearthed." The rest of the ladies stirred, shifting uncomfortably at the implication hanging heavy in the air. "Indeed, Miss Marple," Lady Eleanor spoke, a tremor of fury breaking through her veneer of calm. "You are taking this far too seriously. It is merely a relic of this home, not tied to the theft or whatever sinister machinations you imply." With a knowing glance, Miss Marple nodded, her voice laced with care. "But is it? Has the tea set ignited animosities you prefer remaining beneath the surface? How cleverly you conceal your resentments, my dear Lady Eleanor." Before she could further explore the hidden motives swirling in the room, the soft but distinct sound of glass, shattered from the side hall, broke through their tense conversation. Miss Marple turned sharply, her instincts igniting. Someone was lurking in the shadows. The guests gasped in unison, their trepidation mirrored in the storm outside as a sudden clap of thunder punctuated the moment. Miss Marple moved swiftly, keenly aware of the frenzy rippling through the gathering. Was it fate, or sheer chance, that had placed her in the center of this brewing storm? No, she sensed it clearly. It was truth that sought emergence. "Stay here," she urged calmly as she slipped into the hallway, the warmth of the parlor fading behind her. She moved carefully down the polished wooden floor, her senses heightened. A faint glimmer caught her eye. The edge of a turned-over vase jutted out from a small alcove, no more than a hidden detail beneath the cloak of forgotten decorum. Bent down to retrieve it, she felt the cold slip of guilt, tension, and secrets all coiled around that delicate piece of porcelain. The missing tea set itself. Holding the vase aloft, she felt a sharp intake of breath from behind her. Lady Eleanor had followed, her face ashen, the true weight of the evening pressing down like the storm gathering outside. "You shouldn't have touched it," she gasped, determination creeping back into her posture now, displaying the ferocity of a lioness defending her den. "No, but I should expose it," replied Miss Marple, turning the alcove into a contained space for revelation. "The real question remains, what does this truly mean for the Grimsby legacy?" Standing in the dim corridor, Miss Marple found herself at the precipice of danger. The enigma whispered like the wind against the manor's walls. Each turn of the story led closer to a truth hidden away, yet the very winds themselves carried it forth. As Lady Eleanor's gaze, shrouded in veils of desperation, met her own, Miss Marple made a note of the constellation forming sparsely amongst the guests they left behind, secrets bound with sin, just waiting to unravel. All the pieces seemed nearly poised to fall, but, like the storm beyond, Miss Marple knew the unraveling of these intertwined tales would take time and precision. A breath escaped her lips as she thought of her next steps, for as the echoes of the past beckoned her with slight nuances, she felt the heavy, impending confrontation just on the horizon. The next clue hung delicately in the air. Chapter 3. A Murder Most Foul. The clink of teacups and the murmur of polite conversation shattered abruptly, a piercing scream slicing through the gathering like a blade through silk. Every guest froze as the sound echoed through the halls of Grimsby Manor, drawing their attention like moths to a flame, and unsettled their collective peace. Miss Marple rose instinctively from her chair, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows across the room, while the storm outside ramped up its ferocity, wind howling like an angry spirit. Where did that come from? Lady Eleanor gasped, her eyes wide with shock, as she clutched the edge of her settee for support. It sounded as if it came from the library, Mrs. Whittaker whispered, her complexion pale. She seemed ready to bolt, but Miss Marple remained composed, the rush of adrenaline sharpening her senses. "Stay here," Miss Marple commanded, though she was already moving, gliding through the anxious throng toward the heavy oak doors of the library, which loomed like a portal to the unknown. As she reached for the handle, she noted it was bolted from the inside. The impending sense of dread settled around her shoulders like a heavy cloak. With a firm hand, she banged on the door, her voice steady and unwavering. "Is anyone in there? We need to know what has happened." Silence echoed back momentarily, and then a voice, a high-pitched shriek, broke through the stillness, trembling on the edge of hysteria. "Help! Someone! Please!" "Mary?" Miss Marple interpreted the ragged breath as belonging to the maid. "Hold on. We are coming." Without waiting for permission, she shouldered the door, which creaked open at her insistence, revealing a scene that froze her heart. Mary stood against the far wall, her hands clasped over her mouth as if to stifle the very air she breathed. Every single one of the gathered guests behind Miss Marple peeked anxiously around the threshold, each face reflecting a different hue of fear. In the center of the library, sprawled across the richly woven Persian rug, lay Sir Horace Blake, a local dignitary with a reputation for both charm and guile. His lifeless eyes stared vacantly at the ceiling, and a pool of crimson spread slowly, soaking into the fibers of the rug as if the very essence of life had fled him. Shock reverberated through the assembly. "Good heavens!" Mrs. Whittaker exclaimed, hand fluttering to her chest. "Murder?" Miss Marple stepped forward cautiously, her mind racing through possibilities. "We must assess the situation rationally. Lady Eleanor, fetch the constable immediately." "Why would anyone wish to harm Sir Horace?" Lady Eleanor questioned, though her voice held a tremor as she hastened to take command, her ladyship demeanor slipping as the reality of the situation dawned upon everyone gathered. "The question may not be why, but rather who," Miss Marple replied, her sharp gaze lingering on the torn cuff of Sir Horace's sleeve, stained and ruffled, as though he'd put up a struggle. Enhanced by the flickering shadows dancing across the shelves lined with leather-bound books, the atmosphere was like that of a stage set for tragedy. As the others drew closer, whispers began to swirl among them, like autumn leaves caught in a gust. Lady Felicity, her youthful face taut with anxiety, spoke up. But how? The library was locked from the inside. "A clever ruse," Miss Marple noted dryly, gesturing toward the small window near the ceiling, its latch hanging open just wide enough for someone to slip through unnoticed while the chaos ensued. Mary, whose eyes brimmed with tears, whispered in shock, I didn't see anyone enter after the scream. Sir Horace just collapsed. Or was he pushed? Miss Marple suggested, her mind racing like a clock unwound. She carefully stepped around the body, noting the slight twitch of Sir Horace's hand, betraying a feeble struggle to retain life before that final gasp left his lips. She paused, her gaze honing in on the handkerchief that had fallen beside the body, patterned with crests that bore the initials A.H. "And this belongs to whom?" she inquired, her voice steady enough to draw attention. "Algernon Hayes," Lady Eleanor supplied sharply. "He was here earlier this evening, but left shortly to tend to business matters," he said. "Business indeed," Miss Marple murmured. The room fell silent, a furtive glance exchanged between the ladies, each measuring the other's loyalty. Tension was heavy as a woolen blanket. Even Lady Felicity subdued her youthful impatience, swallowing hard at the implications that surfaced. Miss Marple inched closer to the body, pushing aside the growing knot in her stomach. Sir Horace had his enemies, I gather. It seems this was more than a case of mere loss. Sir Horace knew too much, perhaps irritated far too many in this tight-knit group. A low murmur flickered between guests, and the air filled with a charged mixture of suspicion and fear. "No one would dare," whispered Lady Felicity. "But whom can we trust now?" blurted Mary, her panic peaking as she surveyed their faces. "Was he blackmailing someone?" Miss Marple straightened, sensing the rising tide of emotions. "If we cannot find the motive, we'll be left with no choice but to look for those who stand to gain from Sir Horace's demise. Each of you carries the weight of not only your own secrets, but perhaps of heightened opportunity as well." As Miss Marple gathered the pieces, a shattering remark drifted from the corner. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," murmured Mary, her voice low but almost frantic. "What do you mean?" Lady Eleanor pressed, her steel facade crackling. "It's all my fault," Mary cried, backing away from the group, panic-stricken. I was supposed to keep him out of the way until—" The gasps from the guests echoed ominously, and in that taut moment, the air thickened with accusation. Lady Eleanor's gaze narrowed upon her. "What do you know?" Miss Marple stepped forward, detaching herself from the gathering's pressing energy. "The endgame will require careful excavation into these loose threads of conspiracy. For now, it's essential we maintain decorum. Otherwise, the unthinkable could ensue." All eyes glistened with uncertainty, an avenue of suspicion opening vast, like the valleys of the storm-darkened moors outside. And as Miss Marple squarely faced the assembly, she unmistakably felt the tendrils of scheming knot tightly around the manor, each guest a painted figure, desperate to preserve their portrait amidst this unfolding tragedy. With a closing echo of thunder, Miss Marple whispered, "Our next step awaits, but the truth is lurking beneath the layers. We must unearth it before the storm consumes us all." And so, the game had turned, with each turn of events weaving a tapestry of betrayal, motives, and death. The stage set for the next act of this dreadful play. A chilling doubt hung thick in the air as Miss Marple turned to the library's door, the ominous weight of their conspiracy beginning to surface. At what hidden cost? Chapter 4. The Missing Will. The rain poured violently against the windows of Grimsby Manor, a relentless torrent that assaulted the panes with the fury of grief and suspicion lingering in the air. A hush fell upon the assembled guests who sat in the drawing room, their faces pale and drawn, shadows etched deeper beneath their eyes, since the grim discovery of Sir Horace Blake's body. The flickering candlelight revealed their glances, nervous, haunted, and darting towards one another, an unspoken language fraught with accusation and fear. Miss Marple remained poised, her mind a steady whirlpool of thoughts, knitting together the fabric of the evening's events. Each gust of wind howled, as if echoing the very secrets they were all struggling to suppress. "What an utter tragedy," remarked Lady Felicity, her voice quavering. "We've gathered to celebrate, not to mourn." "Indeed," responded Miss Marple, her keen eyes observing how Lady Felicity fidgeted with a locket around her neck, fingers trembling slightly, betraying a tension that belied her words. And yet, in tragedy lies truth, waiting to be unearthed. Just as the heavy atmosphere threatened to suffocate, the door creaked open, drawing everyone's attention. In stepped Mr. Algernon Hayes, his expression a flawless mask concealing a tempest within. The curtain of silence enveloped him as he neared the center of the room, his tailored suit still pristine despite the chaos of the earlier hour. "Forgive my intrusion," he began, his tone clipped and precise, "but I bear important news concerning Sir Horace's estate." Speculation rippled through the guests like the tremor of an earthquake. "Estate? What of it?" Lady Eleanor questioned, steeling herself, her upper lip curling just slightly. "There's a will, is there not?" "Not quite," replied Mr. Hayes, with a foreboding edge to his words. "As his attorney, I was made privy to a recent development involving a missing document that may alter the entire course of inheritance." Gasps echoed in the dimly lit room, ricocheting against the lofty ceiling as if drawing the attention of the very spirits of the manor. "Missing? How can a will go missing?" Mrs. Whittaker questioned, adjusting her spectacles, the glint of alarm flickering within her hazel eyes. Sir Horace had mentioned an intention to revise his will prior to his untimely death, the ramifications of which could financially devastate quite a few of you, he explained, casting a cool gaze across those gathered. "There remains the question, was he murdered to conceal his wishes, or was this a preemptive move by a party seeking to profit from his demise?" Miss Marple noted the sharp inhalations that followed, eyes widening as all considered the implications. What exactly did he intend? Who stands to benefit from his death? She probed, her voice steady yet inquisitive as she embodied the calm amidst the brewing storm. "He spoke of family secrets," Mr. Hayes replied, shifting uncomfortably, yet unable to mask a glimmer of tense resolve in his gaze. "Murmurings of a disgraced relative who was once disowned, perhaps even a malicious attempt to keep this individual from reaping any benefit of inheritance. If such a will exists, and if it surfaces, it would change everything." The mood, taut as a drawn bowstring, seemed to beckon, with hidden resentments and fears bubbling to the surface. Lady Eleanor's voice shook with indignation. "And you didn't think it prudent to inform us until now?" "Those were not my words to share," he retorted defensively, his eyes flickering towards Miss Marple's knowing gaze, as if issuing a challenge. "Quite right," she replied, her thoughts racing to the unwritten shadows of ambition and decay. Yet we must wonder what motivated such a hasty action when Sir Horace claimed he was merely finalizing his intentions. A sudden darkness must have encroached upon his plans. The room fell silent, as if acknowledging a truth that lurked unspoken. The whispers of storm-washed secrets were woven throughout the aged manor, every creak in the wooden floorboards echoing burdens of unfulfilled legacies. Miss Marple turned to Mary. The maid, who had been lingering at the periphery, her face strained with anxiety. "Mary, tell me, were you aware of this missing will?" she asked, her tone gentle but firm. Mary's voice trembled as she stammered, I wasn't aware of its contents, but I overheard Lord Horace arguing with someone in the library a few days ago. He was quite agitated, and I thought they were merely discussing family affairs." An argument? Miss Marple seized upon this revelation, her mind racing to connect the dots threaded between suspicion and resentment. "Can you recall who it was he argued with?" "No, it was too far down the corridor. I could only hear muffled voices," Mary lamented, her frustration mounting as she fidgeted with the hem of her apron. Mr. Hayes interjected, urgency sprouting from the gloom. "Time may be of the essence. If there is a lost will, we must find it before the winds of fate decide our course." Miss Marple's gaze sharpened, focusing on the fine details of the unfolding scene. "The library," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "We may need to return. If Sir Horace had been in the midst of his alterations there, perhaps the document can be found amidst his papers, or hidden in plain sight. What if someone has already destroyed it?" Lady Felicity's voice quaked, her complexion paling further. "Then their motives will become undeniably clearer," Miss Marple responded, her resolve hardened. "Let us not forget, though unfortunate death may sometimes unearth the deepest of deceptions in life, those pushing against the shadows often leave traces behind." As tension coiled tighter, the murmur of realization rippled through the gathering. Each guest now bore the weight of their choices, the storm outside swirling more aggressively, echoing the churn within their hearts. Miss Marple's penetrating gaze swept across the room, each face a mask, a facade concealing the tempest beneath. "Mr. Hayes, gather any papers Sir Horace may have left scattered across the library. We shall commence our search forthwith," she commanded, and turned to the others, a steely determination igniting in her eyes. "It is here, among the dust and memories of the past, that we may find the truth that could unravel this tangled web of deceit." As she stepped back into the tumultuous embrace of rain and thunder, a sense of purpose surged through her, like the very currents of the storm itself. The implications of the missing will loomed large, yet it was the shadows of family legacy, intertwined with greed, that threatened to reveal truths darker than death itself. With each calculated step towards the library, Miss Marple could feel the threads of the mystery tightening around her, waiting for the moment she would pull at them to unveil an inevitable reckoning. And just before the door closed behind her, a flash of lightning illuminated a figure lurking in the corridor, a face she recognized, twisted with urgency. "You don't know what you're about to uncover," they hissed, and the chilling tension hung in the air as Miss Marple felt a darkening weight settle upon her like the night. Chapter 5. Clues Beneath the Surface. The rain drummed incessantly against the window panes of Grimsby Manor, a relentless symphony resonating with the turmoil swirling inside. Miss Marple ignored the weather, her focus tuned to the faint creaks and murmurs that echoed off the ancient walls, each sound amplifying the tension in the air. As she stepped into the musty embrace of the library, a flicker of lightning briefly illuminated the room, casting shadows that danced crazily across the bookshelves. It was here, beneath layers of dust and time, that she hoped to unearth the truth hidden within Sir Horace Blake's tangled web. She noticed immediately that the furniture had been hastily rearranged. Mr. Algernon Hayes, his brows furrowed with both urgency and reluctance, had already begun combing through the scattered papers piled where Sir Horace had often worked. "We must act quickly. The storm may wash away not just footprints, but perhaps evidence," he urged, brushing aside an unassuming tome on the tea-set collection that stood prominently on a side table. Miss Marple directed her attention to the tea set itself, the prized possession of the Blake lineage, glistening under the flickering candlelight. "How delightfully charming," she murmured. But underlying her commentary was a subtle probing for connection. This fragment of their inheritance felt oddly positioned amidst the brewing tension, as if it were trying to whisper secrets of its own. "Charming indeed, but it pales in comparison to the real value of family," Hayes replied, his voice tinged with disdain. "Everyone would prefer this rather trivial collection based on mere aesthetics over whatever nefarious dealings linger in the shadows." "You suggest there's something more meaningful we should consider?" Miss Marple inquired, her eyes narrowing. Hayes hesitated and looked away, an involuntary tell that raised her suspicion. At that moment, a loud crack of thunder broke across the sky, shaking the manor to its core, and with it, igniting the edges of her curiosity. "By the way, where is Lady Eleanor? She was most interested in the tea set before the storm uprooted our soirée." He shifted uncomfortably, crossing his arms defensively. "Lady Eleanor was very fond of it. She and Sir Horace had quite a history surrounding the family heirlooms, but personal attachments can often be veils for betrayal. Which carries us to the crux of our search. What else does she wish to conceal?" Miss Marple observed, her mind weaving connections as she rummaged through a pile of letters strewn on the desk. Carefully, she began sorting through the correspondence, the scrawled ink revealing hints of animosity cloaked as feigned concern. "Ah, what's this?" she exclaimed, pulling out an envelope adorned with an unfamiliar seal. "It appears to be addressed to Sir Horace, claiming that all correspondence regarding the tea set itself must remain unanswered until further notice." Her brow furrowed in contemplation. "An unusual demand, wouldn't you agree?" "It could simply be a trivial request," Hayes suggested hastily, but Miss Marple detected a nervous twitch at the corner of his mouth, a subtle shift that hinted at deeper apprehension. "Perhaps, but why invoke a seal? That suggests something of weight. The tea set may be a mere trifle to him, but not to someone else." She opened the letter, revealing a handwritten note that hinted at an upcoming negotiation regarding the tea set that had clearly gone awry, leading to an impromptu urgency to conceal information. "Mr. Hayes, I wonder whether you can discern the handwriting here. I may not be an expert, but this does not resemble Sir Horace's script." She tilted the sheet toward him. He squinted at it, his pulse quickening. "Why, yes, I can confirm it is not his," he conceded, his tone edging toward alarm. "But whose could it be?" "That's precisely what we must ascertain." Miss Marple's eyes darted around the expansive room, careful to observe the minutiae, the placement of objects, the flickers of shadow behind the stacks of books. There may be history vibrating within these walls. What if the tea set holds clues to the fractures that run deeper? At that moment, Mary, the timid maid, slipped into the library, quietly observing, her breath quickening when she noticed the focused intent on Miss Marple's face. Excuse me, Miss Marple," she stammered. I could help if you need anything." "Ah, Mary, we were just discussing the tea set." Miss Marple gestured for her to approach. "You must have seen some interactions surrounding it. Can you recall any disagreements, perhaps, about its ownership?" Mary hesitated, biting her lip. "Well, I did overhear Lady Eleanor saying something rather heatedly one time about how the family was meant to stay united, but it was difficult, especially when it came to material items like that tea set. Interesting, Miss Marple mused. Did she mention any specific grievance? She mentioned it in passing when speaking with Lady Felicity, but I couldn't catch everything. Just the way they both seemed to dance around the subject. It felt more than just about the tea set, if that makes sense. Miss Marple nodded, feeling the weight of the implications settle, like the rain outside. Indeed, it suggests a Bond article, wrapped in something else, something tenebrous. She could sense the shifting atmospheres around her, and pondered whether Lady Eleanor's so-called unity was unraveling at the seams. Then, as they continued their examination, a flimsy piece of parchment slipped from between 2 pages of an old ledger that had remained untouched for decades. It fluttered to the ground, and Miss Marple picked it up with sudden urgency, her keen eyes scanning the cryptic message. A meeting regarding heirs, today at the Foxglove. The room fell silent. A hint of realization washed over Mr. Hayes's face, then shifted to fear. He stammered something, unintelligible, eyes widening. In a split second, Miss Marple recognized his panic. An incriminating event was unfolding. "Mr. Hayes, you seem perturbed by that piece of parchment. Perhaps it is time we delve deeper beneath the surface, don't you think?" As another bolt of lightning struck, illuminating the room once more, Miss Marple felt the crescendo of the storm reflect the urgency gathering in the unfolding mystery. The haunting question echoed within. What lay beneath the tea set's surface? A shelter for familial affection, or a cauldron seething with betrayal and long-buried motives? The wind howled outside, as if urging them toward a truth that was soon to be violently revealed. Before she could voice her next thought, a figure darted past the window outside, the blurred silhouette flickering in the storm. "What on earth?" Miss Marple gasped. "Who was that?" I don't know," replied Mary, her voice trembling. The tension thickened, intensifying as Miss Marple stepped forward, ready to unravel the danger lurking just beyond the storm-washed threshold of the manor. The truth loomed closer, and with it, her insatiable need to uncover how deeply the roots of secrets wound into the very fabric of Grimsby Manor would soon be tested, each clue leading one step closer to a chilling resolution. Chapter 6. Vanishment at Twilight. The tempest's fury roared outside Grimsby Manor, fierce and unyielding, as if nature herself were embroiled in the melodrama of betrayal and dark secrets. Rain lashed at the windows, and the wind howled like a forlorn spectre. Inside the library, Miss Marple stood poised, the flimsy parchment still clutched in her hand, its cryptic message reverberating through her mind. A meeting regarding heirs. Today, at the Foxglove. Her heart quickened. The clock was ticking. "Mr. Hayes," she implored, fixing him with a gaze that bore questions deeper than the storm. "We must understand the significance of that meeting. It seems too precisely timed, given our circumstances." Hayes, still visibly shaken, clenched his fists in a nervous gesture. I don't see how this pertains to me. Surely I have nothing to do with any heirs or clandestine meetings." The minute tremor in his voice caught Miss Marple's attention, like a fishing line snagging a probing fish. "Yet you are here, drawn into the web," she countered, her tone steely and confident. "The evening is pregnant with revelation, Mr. Hayes, and if you have knowledge of something troubling, I urge you to share it." His eyes darted towards the door. "Lady Eleanor, she may have gone to meet them," he muttered, the pallor of his face deepening. I can't. Can't what? Miss Marple pushed gently. Can't tell me what you know, or can't bear the weight of your own conscience? Before Hayes could respond, the sound of hurried footsteps resonated in the corridor beyond. Miss Marple exchanged a glance with Mary, whose wide eyes reflected fear. In an instant, the door swung open, revealing Lady Eleanor, her hair disheveled and raindrops clinging to her pale complexion like discarded promises. "Miss Marple, you must help me," she gasped, her breath coming in quick, frantic bursts. "It's about Algernon." "Where is he?" Miss Marple asked, her intuition on high alert. "I don't know." Eleanor cried, clasping her hands together as if in prayer. "He ran out into the storm just now. I tried to stop him." "Why did he leave?" Miss Marple inquired sharply. "I'm not sure. He received a letter, and—" A loud crash echoed in the library, and a flash of lightning illuminated Hayes's face, twisted in a mixture of anger and fear. "You need to stop this, both of you." His voice carried a desperation that cut through the tension. In that moment, Miss Marple sensed the urgency of the hour. "Lady Eleanor, can you recall anything more? A detail, a whisper, anything that might lead us to understand why he left?" Eleanor wrung her hands, tears now pooling in the corners of her eyes. "He mentioned something about meeting at the old foxglove hut. Said it was urgent. Too urgent for me to ask questions." Miss Marple's mind raced. The foxglove had belonged to the Blake family for generations, nestled on the edge of their estate like a sleeping guardian. But tonight, it loomed like a sentry of secrets. "We must go after him," she asserted, the winds outside intensifying in agreement. "I'll fetch my coat," Mary exclaimed, scurrying off to the entrance. "Stay back," Hayes bellowed suddenly, stepping closer to Miss Marple, his demeanor shifting. "What if it's a trap? What if he's leading you right into danger? He knows far more than he's letting on." Miss Marple regarded him quietly, her mind already sifting through a tapestry of possibilities. "And you would prefer we do nothing? If Algernon is in peril, I wouldn't put it past him to fabricate a situation," Hayes replied defiantly. "What if he's the danger? What are the motives if we reveal ourselves?" But Miss Marple had already turned on her heel, marching toward the door with Lady Eleanor tight at her side. "You speak as if you know more than you should, Algernon," she said coolly, casting a penetrating look over her shoulder. "But we shall see if it is you who are the true puppet master in this play of inheritance." Their dense silhouettes vanished into the night, disappearing into the storm's embrace, where the shadows themselves felt alive with expectation. As they navigated the manicured labyrinth of the estate, the air thickened with the scent of rain-soaked foliage and the promise of revelations yet to come. Every step further separated them from the safety of Grimsby Manor, and every gust of wind that swept past seemed to whisper secrets of its own. Ahead loomed the foxglove hut, its outline dimly visible through the shroud of rain. Miss Marple held Eleanor's arm tighter, an effort to provide reassurance amid the tempest of uncertainty. As they neared the structure, a flickering light beckoned ominously from within. "Algernon!" Eleanor called, her voice trembling against the maelstrom. Silence. Miss Marple stepped lightly, a calculated whisper of movement as she drew nearer to the door. Hand raised, she knocked gently. "Mr. Hayes," she shouted, her eyes scanning the perimeter for any sign of life. The flickering had ceased, and they were met with an unexpected cold stillness. Just as she turned the doorknob, a low groan echoed from inside. The door swung ajar, revealing an empty room dimly lit by an oil lamp. Inside, the air was heavy with tension. The floorboards creaked beneath her feet, a symphony of warning. "Algernon," Eleanor ventured, stepping beside her. Together, they peered into the darkness, uncertainty gnawing at their resolve. Then her gaze caught something, a crumpled piece of paper, soaked but still legible, lying amidst the debris on the floor. Miss Marple lifted it gingerly. A chill ran down her spine as she read the hastily scrawled note. "Meet me at the gate by dawn. There's no turning back." Her pulse quickened as she realized the implication. "Eleanor, we need to find him before dawn breaks. The stakes are far higher than I imagined." A sudden crash from the direction of the outer door revealed Hayes, drenched and panting. "I couldn't," he faltered, his gaze darting around the room, falling upon the note in Miss Marple's hand. "What is that?" Eleanor stepped back, alarmed. "What have you done, Algernon? Where were you?" "I can explain," he shouted, raising his hands as a shadow of something darker flickered in his eyes. "But first, we need to find him. He's at the gate, and it's all happening tonight. You can't understand what's at stake." Behind them, the storm continued its relentless assault. Yet for Miss Marple, the storm within had grown calm. She understood the moment clearly now. The revelation was not just about the vanishing Algernon Hayes, but a twisted map connecting all the players in their dangerous ballet. With the note clenched firmly in her hand and the echoes of older secrets whispering around her, she answered him with steady resolve. "Then lead us there, for we may still have time to avert a far greater tragedy." As the flickering shadows of the hut swayed, a new pulse of uncertainty lingered in the air, each heartbeat bringing Miss Marple closer to the final unraveling of their web. And yet, with it came a chilling dread that dark truths lay just beyond the storm's fury. The twist of fate was all but sealed. One wrong move could spell disaster in the unfolding chaos of loyalty and treachery. Chapter 7. Secrets of the Attic. The storm raged on, its furious winds howling like a chorus of spectres demanding entry into the heart of Grimsby Manor. Rain lashed against the windows, creating a rhythmic symphony that echoed through the hollow halls of the estate. Miss Marple stood in the dimly lit corridor, Lady Eleanor's pale face illuminated by flashes of lightning. They had raced back after the unsettling encounter at the Foxglove hut, urgency propelling them to uncover the depths of the mystery swirling around the Hayes family. "Perhaps there's something in the attic," Miss Marple suggested, her voice steady despite the turmoil surrounding them. She had a sense that untold stories lay ensconced in the dusty confines of the manor, waiting for the right moment to surface. The attic has been untouched for years, and it is often where families hide their unwanted memories. Eleanor hesitated, her brow furrowing in concern. But what if it is dangerous? What if the storm has brought more than just rain? Algernon is a puzzle, Miss Marple interrupted gently, but I have discovered that puzzles are best solved by looking closely. This storm may very well move away all the debris and reveal truths we cannot yet see. She turned, determination etched into her features. "Come, let us see what awaits us above." As they ascended the creaking staircase toward the attic, each step was a reminder of generations past, a conversation of whispers echoing the tales of those who had walked these very boards. A gust of wind shook the door as Miss Marple pushed it open, her heart beating in time, with the tempest raging beyond. The space beyond was dim and musty, a world of shadows punctuated by glimmers of moonlight filtering through a small, grimy window. Layers of dust danced in the air, and Miss Marple's keen eyes swept across the room, now adorned with cobwebs and relics of yesteryears. Over there, she pointed toward an old trunk tucked into the corner, its leather surface cracked and peeling with age. Let's start with that. It may contain letters, sentiments of the past that could reveal motivations behind the actions of the living. Eleanor's fingers trembled as she approached the trunk, gently lifting the latch that had long remained dormant. Do you really think we'll find something worth the risk? Algernon, she trailed off, a shadow of doubt lurking in her eyes. He is not the only one with secrets, dear Eleanor, Miss Marple replied, her voice soothing yet firm. Every family carries its stains, some more scandalous than others. Now let's uncover them. With a sudden creak, the trunk sprang open, releasing a cloud of dust that billowed into the air. Inside lay a collection of photographs, letters, and faded correspondence. Their musty scent was a blend of nostalgia and unresolved tension. As Miss Marple sifted through the contents, her gloved hands caressed the photographs. "Look here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper as she held up a picture revealing a youthful Algernon laughing amidst a group of somber relatives. Their faces, tight with unspoken fears, depicted a gathering far removed from joy. A family reunion, perhaps. Yet, I suspect there's more woven into the fabric of these smiles. Eleanor leaned closer, her brow furrowing with confusion. But what does this matter? He looks so happy. Happy masks can hide many a truth, Miss Marple replied, her sharp gaze pinpointing a figure partially obscured in the backdrop. And who is this gentleman? She indicated a man standing slightly apart from the group, his expression inscrutable. The features, though blurred by age, bore a remarkable resemblance to Algernon. Yet there was something different about the angle of his jaw, the set of his brow. With newfound resolve, Miss Marple continued her search through the trunk. Among the letters, one specifically caught her eye, a thick envelope sealed with crimson wax. "This looks different," she murmured, prying it open and extracting the contents with careful precision. The letter inside was penned in a vigorous hand but appeared hastily scrawled. I know what you intend to do. There are consequences for those who break bonds, blood or otherwise. Meet me where the light dies." She held the note aloft, her eyes narrowing as she focused on the detail. The light dies, such a poetic expression, yet filled with foreboding. The address is not mentioned, but it speaks to an understanding of the setting where torn allegiances will unfold. Someone is at the end of their tether, and they expect the worst. Lady Eleanor's gaze flitted between the letter and the photographs, the urgency of the situation dawning on her. "Do you think Algernon has betrayed his family?" "We must remain measured, Eleanor," Miss Marple replied, her voice slicing through the swell of tension. "But do pay attention. It is not just Algernon in question. Look here at this photograph." She extracted another picture that displayed a delicate woman whose gaze held a glimmer of sadness, standing next to the man who resembled Algernon. This could be his mother, yet it suggests the presence of another family dynamic. Look how she stands away from him, perhaps a sign of fear. "A mother hiding from her child," Eleanor remarked, absorbing this revelation with growing unease. "Why?" "Questions abound," Miss Marple replied, the cogs of her mind turning rapidly. "It is time we get to the heart of the rift." She moved to a dusty bookshelf, crammed with books, their faded spines holding the weight of family histories. With a flick of her wrist, she began to search for more evidence. Just then, a loud crash echoed from below, rushing through the halls with such force that the dust fell from the rafters like an unsettling rain. Both women jumped. The precarious atmosphere shattered, and Eleanor clutched her arm in fear. What was that? "Mr. Hayes," Miss Marple called out, recognizing the potential for chaos to reign within the manor. "Or perhaps stop lurking in the shadows. Showing yourself now would be most courteous." In the thick silence that followed, precipitated by the reverberating sound of shuffling feet, uncertainty grew tenfold. "What if it's Algernon?" Eleanor fretted, her eyes wide with fear. "Possibly," Miss Marple replied, her voice calm yet vigilant. "But we must not let ourselves be swayed by shadowy figures. Whatever awaits may hold the key to this family's riddles." As if on cue, the door to the attic swings open with a slow creak, revealing a dark figure shrouded in the tempest without. The moonlight pooled around his feet, casting elongated shadows that danced ominously behind him. "Miss Marple," the figure spoke, his voice laced with urgency and desperation. "We need to talk before it's too late." The tension swelled in the air, and Miss Marple's mind raced as she scanned his face, searching for the truth behind the tumultuous emotions brewing within. With a sudden rush of clarity, she realized the woman standing next to Algernon had looked alarmingly familiar, just as she pieced together the last fragment. "Before it's too late, or before the light dies," she murmured softly, eyes narrowing as the shocking truth reached a boiling point, leaving the crux of the mystery dangling precariously in the balance and revealing a bounty of deeper secrets still left to unravel. Chapter 8. The Confession. The relentless rain drummed against the roof of Grimsby Manor, punctuated only by sporadic bursts of thunder that rattled the windows. Inside the attic, the atmosphere thrummed with tension, the scattered remnants of history around Miss Marple and Eleanor thickening the air with unspoken legacies. Algernon's troubled gaze pierced the shadows, but before Miss Marple could voice her instincts, the attic door swung open, revealing the storm-drenched figure of Agnes, Hawthorne, their neighbor, and a distinctive pulse within the village. Her cheeks were flushed, the damp hair clinging to her forehead as she gasped for breath, and a stricken look resided in her eyes. "Miss Marple, I've come to warn you," Agnes stammered, hardly giving herself time to stand inside the threshold. "It's Algernon. I think he's in great danger." Eleanor stepped forward, her heart pounding. "What do you mean? We were about to confront Algernon. He has secrets of his own." "I know," Agnes interjected with growing urgency, "but this goes beyond the tea set and family squabbles. Algernon, he's mixed up in something darker. Secrets buried deeper than what we've unearthed. I overheard Vincent Godfrey speaking. He mentioned a deal made in shadows, one that involves your family's legacy." Miss Marple felt a chill settle in the pit of her stomach. The tea set, the one ornate heirloom with tales of betrayal, power, and a haunting past. "What deal, Agnes? What do you know?" Agnes bit, her lip, caught in a web of her own fears and revelations. He plans to confront Algernon tonight at the gate. I heard them. There are whispers of loss and blood. It's all tied to that cursed tea set. Nothing is what it seems." The wind howled outside, drowning out Eleanor's gasp. "But why? Why would Vincent want to harm Algernon?" She said something about the last piece of the puzzle, and that Algernon would pay the... Agnes stopped, glancing nervously at the photographs scattered over the trunk. "I can't say more now. We have little time before something dreadful happens. I saw Algernon earlier, and he looked distraught, almost mad." Madness can stem from desperation, Miss Marple replied, her mind racing through corresponding threads of this tangled family narrative. She could see the interplay of past and present amalgamating in a festering wound of familial loyalty. Perhaps it's not just Algernon who is driven by madness, but all of them could be embroiled in a legacy that refuses to let go. We need to find him. Now. As the trio moved towards the staircase, a loud crash echoed from below, halting them in their tracks. "What was that?" Eleanor shrieked, eyes wide with terror. "It could be Vincent Godfrey making his move," Miss Marple hypothesized, her mind already working through the potential implications. "We must be cautious but resolute. Darkness breeds in silence and fear. Let us not succumb to it." With a shared glance of determination, they descended the creaking staircase, the shadows of Grimsby Manor spiraling around them like spectres refusing to fade. When they reached the lower level, the soft glow from an oil lamp flickered in the parlor, revealing a disordered space as if it had been hastily abandoned. "Algernon," Eleanor called into the drifting gloom, her voice barely rising above a whisper. "Are you here?" No answer. The room lay shrouded as thickly in silence as the storm outside. Where might he have gone? Miss Marple pondered, aloud, her keen eyes surveying the remnants of a recent struggle. There were overturned chairs, books scattered across the floor, telltale signs that something had occurred. Agnes stepped further inside and gasped, pointing to a shrouded object resting atop the writing desk. "What's that?" With careful steps, Miss Marple approached. Beneath the shroud lay an ornate box structured similarly to a tea-set case. Heart racing, she pulled the shroud aside to reveal the magnificent silver tea set, unmistakably vibrant even in its tarnished form. So this is what remains of the legacy that binds their fates. Eleanor stepped closer, her hand trembling as she reached for one of the cups. It's beautiful, but also wretched. A family's pride reduced to dust and darkness. Miss Marple's thoughts raced. This tea set, is it truly valuable, or a representation of something darker? It seems to speak volumes in a vocabulary of betrayal and sorrow. Perhaps it acts as an anchor for the chaos unfolding tonight. The sound of hurried footsteps interrupted their moment. Algernon appeared, disheveled and wild-eyed, as if he had danced too long on the edge of sanity. "You shouldn't have come here," he shouted, the urgency of his tone reflecting the storm they had braved. "There's no time for explanations. I've spoken with Vincent, and things have taken a turn that I didn't foresee." "I don't think you understand the gravity of the situation," Miss Marple replied sharply, her mind racing as she observed the fear lacing his words. "There are pieces to this puzzle that only you can unveil. What did Vincent mean by the last piece?" Algernon hesitated, his tongue darting anxiously as he glanced at Agnes. "If I tell you, it could endanger all of us. I'm trying to protect you." "From what?" Eleanor interjected, her voice rising in desperation. "It's too late to protect me from shadows, Algernon." The air pulsed with suspense as Algernon turned pale, his eyes darting around the room, avoiding their probing stares. "Vincent knows that the tea set holds more than just value. It's a key to a trap waiting to close around the family. Things will spiral out of control before dawn. He's promised it." Miss Marple stepped forward, her voice steady and calm. "Algernon, hear me. You must trust us. The truth, and perhaps the confession you're holding tight, may save your family yet." For a moment, the storm outside lightened with eerie quiet, as though the universe watched with bated breath. Algernon opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, The door to the parlor was flung open, revealing Vincent Godfrey, a triumphant smirk etched across his face, the moment ambushed by malice. Ah, how quaint! The family gathers for one final confession. "I see you've found my little keepsake," he proclaimed, his gaze landing menacingly on the tea set. "But there's more at stake than mere heirlooms, dear cousin. It's time to reveal the entire legacy." And with that, the shadows deepened, the storm's crescendo echoing inside the manor, as the true confessions began to unravel, beckoning a conclusion that promised to change the lives of all involved. Forever. Chapter 9. A Portrait of Deceit. The wind howled angrily outside Grimsby Manor, rattling the windows as it sought entry into the warmth within. Lightning flashed violently, illuminating the parlor where Miss Marple, Algernon, Eleanor, and Agnes stood tense and apprehensive. The air was stifling with secrets, the weight of untold stories curdling in the dark corners of the room as thunder rumbled ominously overhead. Suddenly, a resounding crash erupted from the hallway, sending a surge of anxiety through the ears of those present. A dusty portrait, hanging on the wall, trembled, its frame teetering precariously on its nails. "Did you hear that?" Eleanor gasped, her fingers grasping the edge of the table as if it could provide some semblance of safety. "Stay close, but do not make a fuss," Miss Marple advised, her eyes narrowing with resolve. "Everyone seems keen to reveal their true colors tonight, and it will not come from silence." She moved towards the doorway, guided more by instinct than fear, and as she peered into the dimly lit hallway, a flicker of motion caught her attention. "Algernon, where is Vincent?" She turned back, but his face twisted with conflicting emotions of anger and despair. "I don't know," he whispered, gripping the edge of the desk with white knuckles. "All I know is he's become more unpredictable than ever. Predictably villainous, if I may say so." Agnes crossed her arms, her brow knitted with worry. "The legacy of that tea set must hold more meaning than we initially thought." Miss Marple slowly approached the large portrait that dominated the far wall of the parlor, a family gathering caught in time, housed in an ornate frame intertwined with vines of gold. Captured in the midst of joviality, the figures appeared blissfully unaware of the dark currents tugging beneath their smiles. Observing them carefully, a shimmer of familiarity gripped Miss Marple. "Wait," she said, her voice a blend of realization and determination. "Have any of you examined this closely?" Eleanor furrowed her brow. "Are you suggesting there's more to it than a mere family celebration?" "Perhaps, yes. Let's take a closer look." Miss Marple stepped toward the painting and began to examine the folds of a woman's dress in the foreground, noting a tear at the hem painted with particular care, contrasting with the overall lighter tones of the rest of the garment. "Why would an artist choose to highlight a flaw like that?" Agnes whispered, leaning closer, her curiosity overtaking her initial fear. As Miss Marple continued her inspection, something peculiar struck her. A ghostly hand seemed to grasp a secure connection to two figures at the edge of the painting. A man standing beside the matriarch, whose garments bore the same tear. "The proximity suggests closeness, but look at the emotion portrayed," she murmured, captivated. "Their expressions hide something." "Could it be that they had a secret connection?" Eleanor suggested, her voice quelling into pensive intrigue. "Indeed," Miss Marple nodded as she stepped back, and the rain pelted violently against the window panes. "This portrait fosters deception, intimacy masked by careful brushstrokes and stony-glared masquerades. It reveals the entangled relationships hidden beneath those painted smiles. Algernon hesitated. My mother's family had their share of secrets, but none that ever involved Vincent. His voice trailed off uncertainly, the weight of his ancestry bearing down on him like the storm overhead. Just then, as if drawn out of a dark corner of memory, he exclaimed, "But yes, there was a woman who opened her heart to Vincent. I've heard whispers of an affair long ago." "An affair tied to scandalous consequences," Agnes interjected, her eyes wide, brimmed with understanding. She must have felt deep concern over her ties to that family. But who is she? Possibly even a distant relative, Eleanor pondered aloud, her heart racing. Suddenly, pain flickered in Algernon's eyes. It couldn't have been. Even I thought him incapable of such despicable actions. "Ah, but envy is a powerful thing," Miss Marple interjected, keenly observing Algernon's shifting resolve. "Let us not forget that Vincent is also desperate to protect something tethered to a legacy steeped in betrayal." A slam echoed through the hallway as Vincent Godfrey re-entered the parlor, a dripping wet figure now bearing an entirely different demeanor than moments earlier. "I couldn't help but eavesdrop on your wholesome reminiscences," he sneered, shaking off raindrops that had soaked through his garments. "The more you dig, the more dirt you might unearth." "What business is it of yours?" Algernon flared, steeling himself against the oppressive atmosphere, while Agnes stepped instinctively behind Miss Marple, seeking the elder woman's perceived strength. "I had no choice but to challenge a family that has woven a narrative bearing deception." Vincent's eyes darted to the painting as he smirked. "But I'm afraid it is not merely your ancestral home that pulls at your strings, dear cousin. I note your interest in arranged affiliations." His voice dripped with venom, eyes glimmering with malice. "What do you mean?" Eleanor's voice shook slightly. "Ah, a man and a woman dreaming of scandalous unions. How quaint. Yet there lies the painted truth." Vincent gestured grandly towards the portrait, all bound by a flimsy veneer of respectability. "Spare us your theatrics," Algernon shot back, his indignation momentarily puncturing the tension. "No theatrics here," Vincent bristled. "Every thread of that cloth bears a story, one fraying with each passing storm, and far from the tender gossip you assume. I'm afraid you may need to face your mother's legacy after all." At that moment, Miss Marple stepped forward, her eyes narrowing on Vincent's. "What you intend to reveal tonight might very well put more than just the tea set in jeopardy. I advise you, tread carefully." Vincent smirked again, unfazed. "Careful? What's the fun in that?" Feeling emboldened by a sudden rush of clarity, Miss Marple gestured back towards the painting. "Look closely at that portrait, Algernon. I suspect there's a clandestine connection that binds each of you, one's unnoticed until now. Even as you flinch away from its truths, the echoes of those ties are what bind you to a greater tragedy." With an air of menace still surrounding them, it became clear that the familial connections were imbued with betrayals that might spell disaster, and as the spider weaves its web, twisting the threads becomes their only salvation. None of this ends in fortune for the family, only injuries drawn by revelations meant to remain hidden, Vincent declared, steeling himself and slowly taking steps back towards the door. That echoed on the walls of the manor, and as lightning crackled outside, illuminating the portraits once more, it felt as if the ghosts of the past, framed inside, were leaning in, eager to unveil more than mere family ties, ready to unleash chaos on the unsuspecting relatives. Eleanor held her breath, sensing the charged tension. gripping the edges of the table, her eyes darting towards Miss Marple in search of her insight. With the weight of both discovery and deception hanging palpably in the air, Miss Marple understood they were at the precipice of a harrowing revelation. Before dawn, the truth must surface, or they may take us all by surprise. But before she could finish her thought, a thunderous crash radiated through Grimsby Manor, causing every soul inside to stiffen. The air thickened with an impending sense of doom. As they turned once more toward the door, it swung open with a menacing creak, and the figure of a woman appeared, a ghostly silhouette framed in the dim light of the storm outside, clutching a letter stained with the secrets of the past. The manor, once a sanctuary, had transformed into a chamber of secrets, and the true nature of every guest was about to be revealed, one desperate perhaps to expose everything. And with those haunting revelations hanging heavily over their heads, Miss Marple knew, as the rain continued to pour relentlessly, that the next chapter of this sordid tale had only just begun. Chapter 10. Miss Marple's Masterstroke. The tempest raged outside Grimsby Manor, each bolt of lightning illuminating the shadows that flickered against the walls, as if the very house breathed in tandem with the storm. Inside, the despair cloaked over the family gathered in the parlor, thickened with unspoken secrets. Miss Marple, ever perceptive, meticulously observed the interplay of emotions swirling around her like gales of wind, rattling the old windows. The moment was electric, flecked with anticipation. The arrival of their unexpected visitor, a woman shrouded in mystery, had propelled the circumstances into utter chaos. "Who are you?" Algernon's voice quivered as he stepped back, defensive. "What do you want?" The woman, the silhouette now more defined, stepped forward, revealing a face lined with a sorrow that matched the tempest outside. "Forgive me for appearing so suddenly, but the storm was far too fierce to remain outdoors," she said, her voice calm, yet tinged with urgency. "I come to deliver a message, one that bears the weight of your family's past." "What message?" Eleanor's voice trembled, her grasp on the edge of the table tightening. She exchanged uneasy glances with Agnes, while Vincent's eyes flashed with something darker, a mix of curiosity and derision. "This letter," the woman continued, producing the crumpled envelope from her coat, hand quivering slightly as she extended it towards Miss Marple. "It bears the handwriting of the late matriarch, Lady Agatha, secrets that were not meant to be unveiled, especially not tonight." "Secrets?" Miss Marple took the envelope, her fingers brushing against the parchment. The weight of anticipation hung palpably in the air as she examined the address, the eccentric strokes of the once regal pen unmistakably familiar, each letter cradled in a delicate flourish that bespoke not just a message, but a legacy. "What does it contain?" The shadows deepened around them as the storm quelled momentarily, as if the universe itself paused in anticipation of the words yet to be spoken. "They are confessions of love and betrayal, a web that binds your family together," the woman said, threads of affection entwined with shrouded resentment. "Enough of this farce," Vincent spat, his smirk stripped away, revealing a raw intensity below. "What rubbish is this? Do you truly think that the matriarch's scrawls will mean anything now?" Miss Marple's sharp gaze never wavered from the woman. "And you are?" "I am Cassandra, a ward of Lady Agatha's last estate, shunned for my ties to the family," she replied, her voice muted in resolve. "I have spent years observing, listening. The secrets have weighed heavily on me, and time is drawing short. Brittle claims from a neglectful past, Vincent shot back, though his bravado appeared seam-riddled. You think your existence grants you insight into our affairs? Speak plainly. The tension thickened like the dark clouds overhead, and Miss Marple stepped closer, her intuition aflame. Cassandra, what have you overheard? What binds this family in guilt? Not guilt alone, but vengeance and lost love too, Cassandra replied, her gaze flickering toward the portraits that lined the wall, eyes following the painted smiles. Her voice dropped to a whisper, yet it carried weighty secrets. Long before the tea set was a point of contention, there was a different heirloom, an emerald necklace. It was said to have belonged to Lady Agatha. I believe it was meant for someone other than her rightful heir. An emerald necklace? Algernon repeated, brows furrowing in disbelief. I've never heard of it. Why would you? Cassandra shot back, eager to cut through the fog of ignorance. It was hidden away, buried beneath the facade of family respectability. Lady Agatha did not want it to come to light for fear of what it might unravel. Eleanor leaned in, her curiosity piqued. But why does this necklace hold such power? Because it ties the lives of your family to one another in a manner far more profound than mere bloodlines. The woman depicted in that portrait, the one I believe bears the tear on her hem. She gestured towards the painting. She carries the legacy, a love affair fraught with betrayal that changed the course of your family. Miss Marple's mind raced as she absorbed the tangled connections, each revelation forming a thread she could weave together. Then it seems the tea set is merely a distraction, she hypothesized, her tone contemplative. The true lure is something more precious, not merely a keepsake. It is a legacy designed to fracture. It fractures already, Vincent sneered, fingers twitching absently. You all speak of love, a jest, when it leads to only lies. Enough, Vincent, Miss Marple interjected, her patience focusing the room. Every word spoken here brings us closer to unraveling these betrayals, no matter how much you wish to hide the truth. Cassandra, do you have proof of this necklace? Something tangible? The woman nodded, her demeanor hardening. I have a sketch drawn by Lady Agatha's own hand, a representation of what the necklace would look like. I kept it close, knowing it would be significant one day. Then let us see it, Miss Marple urged, the opportunity for revelation ripe in the air. But before Cassandra could respond, Vincent interjected again, stepping forward with vehemence. You do not grasp the ramifications of unearthing these skeletons, Miss Marple. The truth is a dreadful beast likely to consume us all. Miss Marple's eyes sparkled with the challenge. Then it is your nature, Mr. Godfrey, to confront this truth with either duress or desperation. I assure you, one way or another, it shall come to light. Cassandra's face shifted from relentless despair to a flicker of hope. Perhaps, if it is unveiled, the family can finally untangle these threads. The pain can turn to healing. Algernon stood straighter, newfound resolve bubbling beneath the surface. Then let us see this sketch. Let us break free from the grip of silence that has shackled us for far too long. The storm outside swelled once more, a symphony of thunder drowning out the visceral tension brewing within the parlor. Yet there was a promise woven together by the charge in the air, interspersed with haunted glances and brief hesitations. Miss Marple understood that they lingered at the precipice of upheaval. As the heralding clash of thunder echoed through Grimsby Manor, the door slammed shut once more, plunging the room into darkness. Miss Marple's heart quickened, knowing that suspicions and revelations often demanded the sacrifice of certainty. Let's bring forth the truth, she firmly declared, her voice a soft but fierce beacon. A candle flickered dangerously under the weight of the moment. Then, like a ripple across the water's surface, the lights flickered and dimmed, and the room shuddered as a whisper traveled through the air, bearing chilling implications. Suddenly, the crash of glass shattered the serenity. A single emerald gem rolled across the floor, gleaming with the promise of truths long hidden, ready to ensnare each heart in Grimsby Manor as the storm roared outside. As icy fingers of dread settled in, Miss Marple took the first steps toward a revelation that would draw them all deeper into the heart of the mystery, one that was far from over. When dawn arrived, blood would surely rise to the surface, if indeed they survived the night of. Revelations, Chapter 11. The final veil lifts. The storm unfurled itself with renewed fury, rain lashing against the window panes of Grimsby Manor, while thunder rolled like distant drums in time to the electric atmosphere inside. A ghostly silence eclipsed the hum of the storm, punctuated only by the quick, anxious breaths of the gathered family members as they stared wide-eyed at the emerald gem that had so dramatically revealed itself from the depths of their ancestral shadows. Miss Marple's keen gaze flicked from the gem to the faces around her, and she discerned different shades of reaction. Anxiety in Eleanor's furrowed brow, bitterness in Vincent's clenched jaw, and a flicker of hopeful fear in Cassandra's eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," Miss Marple began, her voice slicing through the tension, "we are at a pivotal moment. This gem, casually rolling forth like an errant thought, is not just an ornamental piece. It is the harbinger of truths we have desperately tried to dismiss." "Spare us. Your theatrics, Miss Marple," Vincent ridiculed, although the tremor in his voice betrayed a crack in his bravado. "A mere stone. What could it possibly signify? The necklace to which this emerald belongs embodies the entwined secrets of your family, betrayals, lost loves, and perhaps even motives for murder," she replied, her tone unwavering, as she stepped toward the glimmering gem with purposeful calm. As she picked it up, a glimpse of familiarity flickered in her mind, a thread left dangling from past conversations. "I recall Lady Agatha's portrait, the woman wearing an emerald necklace, one described in whispers and sketches. Is it not curious that she appears similar to you, Cassandra?" Cassandra nodded, the tension in her frame easing slightly as hope stirred in her heart. "My mother spoke of her, you know. A lineage distorted by longing and jealousy. I'd often wondered why I felt an unusual bond with that portrait. Perhaps there is more to this connection than mere coincidence." Feeling her pulse quickening, Miss Marple turned to investigate the family members, their fates pressed against one another like the pages of a history book. "Vincent, have you ever seen this necklace? There must be some remembrance in your mother's belongings, something that ties her to this heirloom." Vincent shifted, avoiding her gaze. "My mother had many jewels, but none that I recall so vividly. You're grasping at shadows, Miss Marple. This has become quite ridiculous." "Perhaps there is wisdom in shadows," Miss Marple stated, undeterred. "Light obscures many things, while darkness reveals." The subtle sound of a gasp broke through the atmosphere as Agnes, her eyes wide with realization, stepped forward. I remember. When Lady Agatha passed, there was a considerable fuss over her possessions. I could swear I saw a velvet pouch, and Lady Agatha's written instructions stated it was to be hidden," Miss Marple concluded, her heart racing as the pieces began to align in her mind. "A legacy concealed to protect its bearer. There must be a reason for it." "Or a reason for her death," Vincent spat, the thunder echoing his belligerence. You're chasing fantasy cloaked in delusion. We've wasted enough time. But what if there is something to find? Eleanor interjected, her tone turning desperate. This family has been plagued with secrets long enough. A collective stiffness enveloped the room as suspicion lay thick, like the worn drapes hanging in the corners. Each family member found themselves scrutinizing one another. It was the ancestral tension, greed countered by love, loyalty corrupted by desire, and blood turned against blood. Agnes, Miss Marple turned her attention towards her. What compelled you to consider the contents of Lady Agatha's possessions? What weight do those memories hold for you? I was merely concerned about the family legacy, Agnes deflected, but her flushed cheeks contradicted her words. Tradition, you see. I was the one left to handle all the arrangements. Arrangements? Vincent snapped, laughter steeped in disdain. Or perhaps maneuvers better suited to your personal ambition. Enough. Cassandra raised her voice, surprising them all. This is no time for bickering over ghosts of the past. The time for revelations is upon us, and we must confront what has been. Before she could finish, a crash resonated through the manor. A bookcase had toppled over, sending volumes tumbling to the floor like the unraveling of a carefully crafted narrative. The chaos erupted, and in the ensuing scramble, a faded photograph slipped free from the frame, fluttering to the ground. With a sense of urgency, Miss Marple knelt down, retrieving the picture and feeling the pulse of the room shift as she examined it closely. How poignant, she murmured, showing it to the gathering. A photo of Lady Agatha with two young women, one of whom is you, Cassandra, and the other, Eleanor. A stunned silence descended. The evidence, swirling like the storm just outside, broke into clarity. If this photo is from before Lady Agatha's death, she continued, it would suggest a bond, a shared secret among you all. But I hardly knew her, Eleanor protested, although her voice trembled. It suggests otherwise. Miss Marple pointed toward the features of Eleanor and Cassandra. The similarities stark, the shared history now impossible to deny. This can lend us insight, not only into a familial bond, but also potential motives, jealousy, betrayal, each entwined in the very threads of your lineage. Vincent shifted violently, a flash of anger igniting in his eyes. What do you imply? Are you suggesting familial love could lead to murder? Whose love remains unpunished? She replied mystically, the ask hovering in the heavy air. But do consider, what of the necklace? What lengths would one go to ensure it remains concealed? The value of legacies can carry the weight of desperation. Stop it, Eleanor burst out, tears brimming. You're turning us all into monsters. We're not like Lady Agatha. We're not her. Yet you share much of her legacy, Miss Marple said softly. The danger lies in the truth, buried within your family's heart. Now, a surge of sound interrupted, sending the room into chaos yet again, when a hidden compartment within the toppled bookcase revealed itself, a slender silver box shining through the dust, a box that resonated with secrets and mystery alike. A resonant hush fell over them when they recognized the significance of what had emerged. Miss Marple's breath quickened, her heart racing as she stepped closer, each heartbeat echoing against the silence. This box is the final piece. Whatever it contains may unveil not just the truth behind Lady Agatha's death, but also the driving forces of your connections. Vincent's face twisted into a grimace, his eyes flashing dangerously, while Cassandra's expression held a mix of fear and hope intermingled. It should have remained hidden. But it has chosen to surface now when light is required most, Miss Marple stated resolutely, and we shall not shy from examining its contents. As she knelt by the box, fingertips brushing against its ornate lid, a heavy sense of foreboding loomed, the oppressive storm outside matching the tumult within. What awaited them? The final veil lifting, or shadows that would haunt them forever? With trembling anticipation, she cracked open the box, the sound reverberating throughout the room, and with it came a revelation that would consume them all. As she peered inside, she instinctively sensed that a reckoning was near, poised to unravel everything they thought they knew. And yet, even as the storm howled in the night, Miss Marple realized that dawn would not merely bring clarity, it would unveil a truth far darker than anyone could anticipate. Chapter 12. The Tea Set's True Legacy. The storm raged on, drumming furiously against the windows of Grimsby Manor, casting flickering shadows that danced across the cold walls. Inside, the atmosphere crackled with an undercurrent of tension and anticipation as Miss Marple held the silver box in her hands, its ornate craftsmanship glimmering even in the dim light. The gathered family members leaned forward, their eyes fixed on her, and the emerald gem lay abandoned on the floor, forgotten, the midst of the brewing tempest. Satisfied that her audience was rapt, Miss Marple opened the box slowly, its lid creaking like a forgotten promise. Inside, nestled in a bed of velvet, lay not only documents, but also an exquisite, delicate porcelain tea set, each piece adorned with intricate floral patterns and gold inlay, shimmering with an elegance that belied its age. A sharp intake of breath escaped from Eleanor. "What on earth is that doing here?" she whispered, the ghost of disbelief shadowing her features. "That, my dear," Miss Marple replied, her voice wrapped in the gravity of the moment, "is the tea set that belonged to Lady Agatha. Rumoured lost for years, its reappearance may tell us more than we bargained for." Eleanor took a cautious step closer, reaching out to touch the creamy porcelain. But it was said to have vanished during the estate sale after her death. Why was it hidden in a bookcase? A prudent question, Miss Marple mused, her eyes flicking between Eleanor and Cassandra. Each piece is imbued with history, secrets of the heart that echo through generations. It may not be mere coincidence that this has resurfaced now. Perhaps it holds clues to Agatha's legacy and her demise. Vincent scoffed, crossing his arms imperiously. A tea set? What could that possibly reveal? It's a mere collection of dishes. "Ah, but therein lies the beauty of your ignorance," she replied, her eyes narrowing on him. "Objects can be laden with emotions and untold stories. You underestimate the weight of family heirlooms. This set was a symbol of Agatha's ties, whether through love or grief. History can conceal riddles within the mundane." As Miss Marple gently removed the pieces from the box, she squinted at a small sheet of paper tucked inside the set's elegant sugar bowl. She unfolded it with trembling fingers, her heartbeat quickening as the words took form under the flickering candlelight. "I believe this is a list," she declared, turning it around, for all to see. "A list of guests whom Lady Agatha invited for tea over the years." "Fascinating," Agnes interjected, the edges of her lips tinged with sarcasm. "But what does that tell us? We all host tea for friends, dear Miss Marple." "Perhaps," Miss Marple said, her expression resolute. "Yet this list contains names etched deeply into the family history, names that surfaced within the context of love affairs and bitter rivalries." Cassandra reached closer, her breath hitching at the sight of a name she had long feared. Cecilia Hawthorne and Gregory Finch. their names. What were they doing in the tea set's company? The room stilled, each person absorbing the significance of those two names. The rain thrummed against the panes, as if echoing the urgencies of unsaid words. The tea set had become a labyrinth of memory, drawing forth hidden motives. Cecilia, Vincent echoed, the bitterness rippling through him. She was always seen as a threat, the favored niece. After Agatha's death, there were murmurs about who would inherit what, and Gregory was her lover, Miss Marple stated coolly, cutting through Vincent's musings. And love can drive individuals to extremes. Is it so difficult to believe that jealousy could overshadow affection when inheritance is at stake? It's absurd, Vincent protested, shaking his head. You're clutching at shadows again. Am I? Miss Marple glanced at Eleanor, who appeared horrified, yet slightly vindicated. You dimly mentioned feeling the presence of Lady Agatha, did you not? What more do you truly remember about her? I don't, Eleanor stammered, memories anchoring her mind. She mentioned dissolving the tea set to cash in for her charities. Perhaps she was trying to rid herself of baggage. Or perhaps she knew that someone like Cecilia wouldn't stop at claim checks, Miss Marple noted, pushing further. Isn't it eerily convenient that the set resurfaced only when we require answers? Vincent's face twisted with anger. It hardly matters what Cecilia, or even I, thought back then. Those days are dust. Why dredge them up now? Because, dear Vincent, Miss Marple countered smoothly, the truth tends to stay buried until the right moment calls it forth. You see, much like how a well-made tea can conceal bitter roots beneath its honeyed surface. As if right on cue, another violent crash of thunder punctuated her words, resonating through the manor with eerie synchronicity. The lights flickered perilously, and all eyes settled once more on the tea set, which shimmered under the dimming glow like a beacon of lost hopes. Look carefully, Miss Marple instructed. There's something more here, something I cannot yet see. Instinctively, she examined each piece, teapots, cups, and a delicate milk jug, searching for hidden designs, signs, or subtle scratches. Her keen gaze finally landed on the underside of a saucer, heart racing, not from fear, but from hope. A delicate swirl etched into the porcelain caught light, just so, revealing initials interwoven, a bold C intertwined with G. Cecilia Hawthorne's initials, but why would Agatha mark these pieces with her name? Cassandra wondered aloud, a hint of disbelief lacing her words. Because, Miss Marple murmured, anticipation now crackling in her tone, it seems Lady Agatha knew precisely whom to blame should a tragedy unfold, reminding her that love, greed, and loss formed entwined chords in their lives. As she reset the saucer with trembling fingers, the weight of revelation crushed the air within the room. It was a truth that unleashed a cascade of implications. Agatha's tea set was not merely a collection of fragile dishes. It was a harbinger of betrayal, of love that could sculpt destinies or shatter them. Wait, Agnes interjected abruptly. What if it is all a ruse? What if the tea set was never meant to elude attention, but instead crafted intentionally to frame? The sudden and violent crash of lightning interrupted her, illuminating the room for a breath of a second. In that fleeting moment, the weight of a shadowy figure slipped away, knocking into something unseen. Did you hear that? Eleanor gasped as the laughter of Madame Fate echoed within the walls. Miss Marple's heart thundered just as fiercely as the storm, instinctively trailing after the sound, where the room held its breath. Someone was lurking in the shadows, and whatever revelation awaited was perilously close. The key to these tangled lives waited just beyond her grasp. With determination igniting her spirit, Miss Marple stepped forward, urging her family to follow. Let us not tarry. Time is a thief, and truth has a way of revealing itself when least expected. Driven by resolve, they ventured deeper into the manor, uncertainty swarming like moths to the flame. However, one certainty rested heavily on all their hearts. The vanishing tea set was just the beginning, and somewhere in its hidden legacies lay a chilling mystery waiting to be unraveled. Miss Marple had a hunch that dawn may yield answers, but equally it could unleash the deepest shadows of the soul.